Uh-oh.
Lab reporting is live. Recording, whatever it is. It's going.
All right. Should we start on my end? All right. Well, you talk for a second. I got to make sure you're good.
Oh, okay. I'll just talk here for a little bit, making sure that Sean has levels correct. I will fade out, and then I'll talk real loud like this, and I'll just completely fuck up his settings. It'll be great.
No, it's all good.
It's all good? All right, let me get ready to hit the old record on QuickTime. When you say go, sir, I will hit it.
Yeah, you can hit it anytime.
Okay.
We'll see how this works.
We shall indeed see.
You're so low on my end. Why are you so low, Brett?
Sorry. I took a nap earlier. Does that impact anything?
No, I don't think so. There's a little bit of echo, but it never comes through, I don't think. All right, we ready?
Shit, no. Hang tight. Stupid.
Not ready?
QuickTime crap. Fuck. Makes me mad. Okay. Now we're good. Go for it. Do the thing.
All right, here we go.
Hey, this is Chad of EverCon. Hey, I'm listening to Sean and the other guy on Gaming and BS.
Welcome to Gaming and BS, a podcast about tabletop RPGs and other miscellaneous topics of geekery. This is episode 66, where we're going to talk about critical hits and fumbles in tabletop role-playing games. I'm one of your hosts, Sean.
And I'm Brett. Welcome back, folks, or for those joining us. Glad to have you with us. Sean, you didn't notice my shirt, man.
Hey, Brett.
I finally grabbed one.
Brett's got a Gaming and BS shirt, everybody.
Yeah, it took me a bit. Finally got one.
So for all the fans that have Gaming and BS shirts, before one of the hosts of the show,
you get 5 extra experience.
Yes, that I think that goes without saying.
Absolutely.
All right. Are you ready for this, Brett? Are you ready?
I think so. I was taking a nap just before we started. So I'm feeling fresh. Let's do it.
Dust those cobwebs and get those sleepy boogers out of your eye.
Yeah, let's kind of do a little of this, a little of that. All right.
Announcements. Gary Con. I got an announcement up there. Gary Con, March 3rd through the 6th, 2016. Go to GaryCon.com. The event registration, I believe, ends January 1st. I have to get my events in.
You should.
I must have. So last year, the Game Hole guys asked me if I'd run an event at their table. They didn't ask me this year.
They're probably like, yeah, we really don't want to be too closely associated with those guys.
They probably asked somebody like, hey, just out of curiosity, how'd that guy run? You know, is it a pretty good game? Or they're like, no. And then Alex probably is like, I'm not going to talk to Sean then next year.
Yeah, better not do that.
Who knows?
I'm hoping I can go. If you still got the room, you still got a room.
Yeah, I got a room, baby.
All right, I might be able to crash with you. We'll see how it goes.
Back seat of my Jeep.
That'll work. It's March in Wisconsin. It can't be too cold. I can handle that.
It's high as 60 today.
I know. It was freaking crazy. Rain in 60.
It's December, 13th today?
Yeah, December 13th. Not a
2015
drop of snow. Not a flake of snow.
You'll probably listen to this in 10 years and realize, like...
That's when global warming hit and everyone died. It was shortly after that.
The record high as of this point. After that, who knows? All right. We better close in on the banter.
Whew,
let's go to random encounter, shall we? Okay. Random encounter, segment of the show where we field emails, voicemails, and comments from social media and our website. We have a few this week. I don't think I got to the pluses this week for some reason.
That's okay. That's okay.
Hung up on some stuff. We got a couple emails though.
Oh, you start with.
All right. First email from Mark Dawson. Hey, BNS. This is my first time writing to a podcast. Hey. Thanks, Mark.
Makes me feel good.
Hey, thanks for making us your first. Someone suggested your show in a tabletop RPG group on the quote-unquote Book of Faces.
Facebooks.
Book of Faces.
Nicely done.
Play on words. A couple months ago, I've since started with episode 1 and worked my way forward because that's just how I roll.
Nice.
Dude, he is an overachiever, this guy.
This Mark Dawson. He's now he's one of my favorite people.
All right.
Very good.
I just caught up with the latest episode, RPG styles and systems, and feel I'm able to comment with some relevance now that I'm finally current with the show. Having listened to so much BS in a relatively short time, I have some observations on how topics from separate episodes relate to one another. See, he started at 1 and ran all the way through.
He understands the intricate play that is the novel of our experience. So continue on, sir.
Every gaming group has their own style of play regardless of the system. References episode 65. It all comes down to social dynamics, how various personalities interact with one another, episode 50. The type of scenarios a particular GM tends to lay out, episode 24. And how the players choose to deal with challenges, episode 56. Due to the vast complexity of rule sets, episode 5, from countless games, we all tend to, quote-unquote, hand-wave certain things, quote, modify rules to suit our personal needs, unquote, or institute house rules that we find appropriate for our specific group, episode 29. But in playing these bastardized versions of our favorite games, we might be creating more problems rather than improving our gaming experience. By omitting certain rules or opting to include aspects of other systems into our current game, we're going against the game designer's original intentions, which has the potential to create a domino effect.
As Mr. Sneezak and Mr. Vecchio and Mr. Arctor Mark would say, off-label usage.
Off-label usage.
Correct.
He continues, Mr. Mark Dawson. Examples. By saying things like, who cares about created balanced encounters? I'll just tweak the monster's stats, etc. Episode 12. We inadvertently run the risk of a TPK, episode 3, or worse, reward the PCs with more XP, episode 20. Than was earned by dumbing down a powerful creature. And this guy did his research.
Yeah, this man has a freaking Cliff Notes version of every show we've done. This is awesome. This is hilarious.
Mark,
I love it.
You're crazy, man. All right, where did I go? Okay, as a result of unbalanced encounters, we end up with fudging the dice, episode 44, to get the results we want. But if we take the time to build an adventure with an appropriate challenge level, then the group will most likely come out on top, even if we let the dice roll naturally. Choosing not to play with encumbrance, episode 48, rules because the bookkeeping is a huge pain in the arse, automatically devalues basic items, episode 52, like armor, weapons, and as a result, money, episode 46. But if a character can only carry 100 gold pieces out of the dragon's lair and must travel, episode 45, a long and perilous route to safety, suddenly those 100 coins hold a lot more value, even if there are thousands more still waiting to be claimed back in the dungeon. As someone who's been designing an RPG with a friend for the past couple years, I know how difficult it is to keep the bigger picture in mind while writing mechanics to govern the smallest details. Each rule is like a single cog in a hugely complex machine. They all work together and were put there for a specific purpose. At least that's my intention from a game design perspective. Anywho, I've enjoyed listening to the progression of your podcast. The quality seems to audibly improve with each episode. I'm really glad Sean is starting to participate more in the topic discussions after receiving constructive criticism and feedback from other listeners. Brett, thank you for
holding up his end of the bargain. Keep going.
Brett, thank you for choosing some great topics. That's him saying that, not me. I look forward to hearing episodes that deal with more specific aspects of games, which seems to be the direction you're heading. How about an episode that deals with game mechanics? What are your favorite or most hated mechanics from various game systems you've played over the years and why? Apologies for the length of this email. I completely understand if you choose not to address it on the show, but still wanted to share my thoughts and ideas. Hopefully now that I'm current with the show, I'll be able to comment more briefly on individual episodes. Good gaming, all signed, Mark Dawson.
Nice. Thank you, Mark. That was incredibly well thought out, man. That's really cool. Thank you.
P.S. Regarding the die rolls section of the show, rather than 2 to 4 miscellaneous points, I think it should be 2d4.
Oh.
Now, there's times I think I try to emphasize the 2d4, and I don't think I always do that, so I have to enunciate that a little bit more, and a great suggestion by Mr. Dawson. And who should I be to question that guy, Mr. Mark, who
I think he knows our catalog better than we do. Very well.
He's no longer that. Yeah, he's no longer that guy. He's like, he's our archivist.
Absolutely. So I shall take the next one. Forrest. Forrest, I always butcher your last name whenever I try to say it out loud. So Forrest Aguirre. Oh God, I'm butchering it. Forrest A. Published author, great guy. Met him at Gamehole, awesome dude. Says, you guys briefly mentioned new monsters in your last podcast. Brace yourselves for whatever James Raggi puts out in Lamentations of the Flame Princess referee book. I'm not privy to seeing them all, but I know the monster I submitted and will appear in the book. I've seen an art piece here and there, and I've heard hints and rumors about a couple of the creatures that were accepted. James was specifically seeking monsters that were original, not only in their physical characteristics, but in their whole conceptualization. He was seeking monsters that would never find their way into any kind of monster manual, no matter how many iterations of MM were published. I can't say much about my contribution, except it will absolutely freak the players the fuck out, and require something other than mere weapons and spells to defeat it. Ooh, I like this, Forrest. The whole idea of what a monster is will likely get picked up and body slammed when Legends of Flame Princess referee book is finally published, given the rumblings I've been hearing. You have been warned. Thank you, Forrest. Good info.
Yeah, James, I mean, we've talked a little bit about
Lamentations,
yeah. We haven't gotten into it. We haven't bought it. I know Kev Thulu, fan of the show, has bought Bread and Pleasant Land.
Kev has a copy of Lamentations. He lent it to me. I perused it, started through it. Interesting book. Interesting book.
Yeah?
Yep.
Gonna whip that out anytime soon and play it, or what?
I don't know. I'll probably have to grab myself a digital copy of it or get myself a copy so I can make sure I digest it appropriately so I can apply the mechanics where they need to be applied.
I see. Last one for wrapping it up for Random Encounter. Jim Fitzpatrick. He is at Jim the Linguist on Twitter. Thanks for the follow. Just picked up the podcast and love it so far. Only 5 episodes in. I'm also a Madisonian transplant, and I love the local flavor in the show. Keep up the good work.
Well, thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. And if you're local, hey, hopefully we'll run into each other at a local game store or a local con. And if you get some of the local con word of mouth through us, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're on top of that. All right.
Anything else?
I think that's it for Random Encounter.
Let's do the thing.
All right. I do have intro music for the main topic. This is Trial Run. First time only you're hearing it. Premiere. This, I think, is going to take the place all the time for future topics, intros. We'll see. Might be a little too long. I don't know. All right. Main topic. Too long?
Not too bad. Not too bad.
I had a nice cutoff point was right there. Maybe you could fade it a little bit sooner. We'll see. It wasn't too long. Thank you, Angela.
I think she's being polite.
Yes, Angela's in the chat room. Topic of discussion. Brett.
Yes.
Do you want to introduce the topic of discussion?
Yes, I do. So my buddy Zave and I were chatting about this because he's a Rolemaster guy from way back, and I played my fair share of MERP, Middle Earth Role Playing, which is a Rolemaster derivative. And we were talking about how, different ways to make combat exciting, interesting, and talking about kind of the narrative prowess that game masters and players develop over time. And we were talking about, hey, what game systems or tools within them and mechanics-wise helped he and I develop some of the descriptive things that we that we use in our games. And we talked about different Dragon magazine articles and stuff we'd read or people we talked to. But the one thing that kept coming up to us was critical hits and fumbles. These mechanical options, and if you've ever played Rolemaster or Chartmaster, as many people would say, there are skill combat, fumble charts, success charts, failure charts for everything. You've got crazy cool stuff from, I think one of my favorites is, it's impact critical. The text reads, body reduced to gelatinous pulp, try a spatula. A fumble that happens is your fall turns into a dive, you crush your skull and die. There's all sorts of horrible things that happen, or really cool things that can happen. And, even if there's some games have them built in, like right now in your D20 games, your more modern ones, you roll a 20, yay, something cool happens, you roll a 1, and not necessarily something bad happens, but there's still that feeling that I rolled a 20, even though every number on that D20 has a 1 in 20 chance of actually appearing. Whenever we roll the highest or the lowest, we expect something spectacular to happen. And Zave and I were saying how that kind of, for whatever reason, that piece of the mechanic, either something we added in or was officially in there, helped to expand the way we dealt with some of the narrative descriptions and just really helped to bring flavor of something out in the game. So I wanted to talk about critical hits and fumbles. Sean, what do you think? Good topic, bad topic?
Well, it's a little late for that, isn't it?
What? Well, I've given it to you for a while. Let's see what you say.
No, it's a good topic, dude. I'm ready.
All right.
I'm ready. I'm ready to contribute.
Sweet. So, when you pre-official rules for crits and fumbles, I remember first edition AD&D, you and I are old enough, we both played that. We both played Menster's Red Box or something along those lines. Did you use any house rules, home rules for critical hits or fumbles, or did you pull some? Dragon Magazine, I think, had some ages back. Other fanzines and gamers were putting things together. Was that anything you ever used, Sean? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I did.
Really?
So, yes, as a child, young lad playing AD&D first edition, although it wasn't native to the game system itself, we, as a group, when we'd roll a 20 and then we would say, okay, roll it again. And then on that result, we would see what that is. It's kind of the confirmation kind of thing that came with 3.0, confirming crits.
Okay.
So depending on the second roll, and then if we rolled another 20, we'd roll again and see how bad it was. And we'd keep going and see till it was kind of fizzled out. And then we would come up with the damage. So it wouldn't even be the damage necessarily. It may just say, oh, the guy's head gets whopped off. Boom. Done.
So you used it almost like in Rollmaster, you had what's called open-ended rolls, where if you roll 100, you just keep going. So if you roll a 20, you just keep tacking on the bad until it kind of fizzled itself out. Huh.
Yeah, some people either call it open-ended or exploding dice.
Exploding dice, there you go.
Yeah, so we would do that. Even on a 20, we would say, how bad is that 20 or how bad is that 1? We do it for ones as well, for fumbles. So it would be...
You didn't have a chart that was more subjective?
Nope. Yep, totally subjective. And we'd roll, if we rolled a 1, it would always be, how bad is that 1? As a matter of fact, I'd use that all the way up until, not just a few years ago. I would say, how bad is that 1? And if they rolled the 1 again, if they rolled it again and it was really bad, I'd have their weapon fall out. I'd never make it too critical, because then the players would get pretty ticked off. But I think they did get into that a little bit and saying, that's like 3 ones in a row, man.
So were you doing it? So I think you're doing it for the same reason I was. The reason I loved them in Middle-earth role-playing, and even Warhammer Fantasy role-playing, the first edition had kind of not as interesting critical hits charts as Rollmaster, but still had some cool charts. It's that kind of that slow-mo, as we're talking about in the chat room here, kind of that opportunity. It slows the combat down for a second, and whoever did this cool thing gets a bit of spotlight. Were you doing it for the spotlight / really cool narrative effect? I mean, was it just one of those things where you and your group went, well, we rolled a 20, something cool must happen? Is that what you thought, or what were you, or just what? Yeah,
if you rolled a 20, you would hit, and then I think in some of those systems you did double damage on 20.
Some people would, yeah.
So I don't know if it was necessarily termed critical hit, but there would be double damage that would apply. Oh, pardon me, drinking soda, very bad thing to do when you're doing a podcast. when you carbonated drink for that matter, so you would roll the 20 and then roll it again. And if it was kind of meh, I rolled a 10, not a big deal. You just kind of kept on trucking. But I mean, you get up there in the 18, 19, then you'd have the players go, "Hey man, it's 18, 19. Come on. That's pretty good." Or even on a 1, you rolled like a 2 or 3, get it up above, 5, then it wasn't as bad. But yeah, people would other players would start rooting for the dice to roll good or bad.
Yeah. Okay. So I think
like, and then you just sit there and wait.
It's only a 5.
Like,
I wanted to. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I think that critical hits and fumbles are a lot of fun, especially in a fantasy game. And even in a modern setting when you're shooting somebody and you with a gun or a knife or whatever it is, or sci-fi, anytime you're in a combat, having those types of critical, hits, impacts, Dungeon Crawl Classics pulls it back out again. They've got some pretty cool critical hit charts. So having the concept of I rolled really big, I rolled a 20, something cool should happen. I rolled a 1, I'm expecting something bad, weapon breaks, bowstring snaps, something, my gun jams, out of power cells, whatever. I think that kind of is inherent with having that type of randomizer from a combat system when you're rolling a die and there's a chance this could be, on one end of the spectrum or the other. The other thing that, so where Dave and I were going with our discussion was how, to me, that really helped to expand how I, as a game master and a player, expected or implemented narrative. And I really liked the descriptions of the charts and tables at first. So this is when, you're starting to do it. And after a while, like, okay, you cut his head off. And people are like, oh, okay, that was cool the first 5 times, but I want a better description of cut his head off or chopped off an arm. It's so blasé.
Well, you got to get the GM to get out of there the same damn thing every time they're scoring a crit.
I know, but when you score 5 crits in a game, or sometimes, when I was a kid, it didn't have the breadth of, vocabulary that I could dig into. I did not have 20 years of running games experience to be able to just pull different descriptions out of my head, different concepts of what could happen given the situation. And I really think some of the, some of the charts and the tables helped me as a younger game master really pull together some ideas of, this could happen. If you failed a movement maneuver in a Rollmaster game, you could fall here, you could trip there, you could sprain your ankle. And it was oftentimes, ad hoc weird damage. Like, you have a mild concussion. For the next couple rounds, you are -10 on something. Or you sprained your ankle, your movement is limited. So I think what that did was it helped me learn how to implement some of that stuff. So when I got to a game system, now I don't need tables and charts. They're not absolutely necessary anymore. But I think as a younger game master, it was really helpful. Sean, did you use any actual printed tables and charts, or was it all kind of ad hoc on your side?
So starting out, it was more ad hoc. We didn't have a bunch of tables and charts. One ambitious GM would come up with their own, and then it would cascade, right? So if it was you rolled a 20, you'd roll on another chart, and then you rolled another, then the chart would break it down again, and then you would roll it again on another chart. So it would be and it would cascade. So if you rolled a 20, boom, you'd roll on another chart. And then maybe it was percentage, or maybe it was 1d20 again. And then if it was another 20, it went to another chart. And I think as the numbers went higher and as the charts got deeper, the craziness went more gonzo.
Yeah, it does. Because
you roll
it's an escalation
20s.
point. Like, at a certain point, like, okay, I cut off a finger, a wrist, an arm, and it's going to just start exploding at a certain level.
Yeah, you roll 3 20s.
You expect huge, crazy shit to happen.
There's limbs that are going to fall off. What are the odds, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So we didn't really do it formally initially, but I think over time, I think somebody might have come up with like a critical hit chart, and then we'd use it, or maybe they would just use their own, or we'd even get to the, oh no, are you going to use your critical hit chart?
Crap,
man.
Sean's got the bastard critical hit chart. That thing kills everybody.
Yeah, and then had its own reputation.
Yeah, it does. It's true. So I have talked to some gamers that I've played with over the years, and they like, look, I don't really care about charts or graphic damage. Just want to keep rolling. So if you roll a 20, I'm not a big fan of the confirming a critical. That's not even been a big thing for me. But people do. It's a 20 is double damage. It's a 20 is triple damage, or whatever. They just do something very flat like that in order to keep combat rolling, but still give you the excuse me, the feeling that you did something really cool because this rare thing occurred. I think the one place where, at least in the games I've played a lot, when it gets to when you fumble, when the NPC or the monster fumbles, everyone's like, "Oh, that's awesome." When it happens to the players, they get a little, "Oh, whoa, I don't think that would really happen." Or, if you didn't have a description or something and you kind of were winging it, if you will, or kind of your own narrative descriptions, it could get a little dicey because sometimes, players don't like having bad things happen to them. I get that. So sometimes I know fumbles didn't always get the same airtime or weren't stressed as much. There were a lot of critical charts I remember seeing as a younger gamer, but I never saw a lot of critical fumble charts, a lot of critical, I cleaved his head, but not so much I threw my axe across the room type of thing.
I think it was always I think when it came to fumbles, I think we had critical fumble tables that were similar. So the same person that would come up with the critical hit tables would come up with the critical fumble tables. So if you rolled a 1 3 times, 4 times, 5 times in a row, which is nigh impossible at times, then your bad stuff's going to happen, and it may happen to you. And as you roll down and it cascades again, it happens to another person in your party. So you start out going, "Oh, that sucks." The weapon drops at your feet. Then maybe it's worse, and then it drops 5 feet from you. Maybe it goes across the room, or you stab yourself. You stab yourself in the foot. Now you can't move. Now you stab your partner next to you in the foot, and they can't move. Or you stab them in the back or the front, or you lop off their arm.
Exactly.
And then all of a sudden it's like,
I'll tell you,
4 ones in a row. It's like your weapon's not falling at your feet. Something's going to happen badly.
I'll tell you though, when I'm working with my kids, younger gamers, and when worked with some of the kids at the game convention at EverCon, the high school group there, some of the younger game masters, we'll go through a combat, excuse me, and someone will be like, "Wow, that was really cool, that description. Do you have a chart for that? Do you have a table for that?" And I think that one of the things I've expressed to people, my buddy Zave has too, as we're talking / coaching, some game masters ask you for tips or whatever, is especially when they don't have a lot of narrative power, if you will, because they just haven't done it a lot. I've told people, go online and find a D&D critical hit chart. Pull out this chart. Look for something like that. Grab Dungeon Crawl Classics and grab onto it. There's some really cool stuff in there. And I think by having it, even if you don't use the table per se, reading through it, I know my little guy AJ will has gone through my critical hit charts for Middle Earth and went, "Oh, that's really cool." So when he has been the game master, when he's played D&D, even as the player, and something happens, he's like, "Oh, I want this thing to happen." So he's bringing up this memory of the narrative he read, the example, and it's really helped him kind of help it. Yeah, God, I'm all over this, but basically, it's built his narrative capacity for talking about what combat looks like and what it does. So I think that's pretty cool. The other thing that I think that does then is it helps when you get into non-combat things, because the critical hit charts and fumbles are always about, I shouldn't say always, but they tended to be about combat, of course. But when you were, trying to leap across a cliff or something, or trying to climb a rope in a stressful situation, what is a critical success? You climb the rope, and I think by having some of those things, for me anyway, reading through those different charts and things, it really helped me anyway build some, again, narrative capacity so I could better explain things. So it sounds like, Sean, though, you were doing more ad lib, ad hoc kind of descriptions based on the way you did it. I think that's pretty freaking cool. As a young punk game master, you were.
Well, I had my moments until I got old and crusty, and then forgot about all the cool stuff I'd come up with as a young lad. But even with you mentioned like rolling a critical hit to go up the rope, I would make it, you go up the rope twice as fast. You'd be able to carry somebody. You would be able to get up there and see a person at the top, and you'd get an action to whop off their head if you can get there. So it wasn't like, oh, you rolled a 20, you're rolling up, rope is not that big a deal. In 3.0, you couldn't critical a skill, and you really don't nowadays in many systems currently. But I mean, if it was a fumble, it's hard to roll a 1 on a skill check, and especially in like 3.0 derivative games, because you usually have some type of bonus that won't allow you to get an actual 1/1.
But a natural one fails.
A natural 1 on a skill check does not fail automatically.
I know, but up here for a lot of gamers,
Yes.
when it hits the table, the rule is there. But a lot of times when you roll the 20, you expect cool. When you roll the 1, you expect something bad.
Right, when you roll the 1 in some of these the game that I'm referring to, when you have a modifier, you're like, oh, roll the 1, oh, you can, oh, but it's a 5 because I've got +4, and you're like, oh yeah, so it's not really that as bad as I thought it was going to be.
So let's see. So D&D 3.0 crits I think confirming crits is horseshit. I don't like it. I think that's just a stupid way to go. But I like. So anyway, where am I going with this? So there's a cool component to doing this. Like I said, the charts and tables for me as a young game master help me figure out certain pieces of it. I honestly think I have to dig deeper into the history of criticals and fumbles and this type of narrative component of it. But to me, that was the first place that type of either ad hoc, ad libby type of descriptions would come into play. And then it starts to develop into games like, well, the modern game, the Star Wars one we were playing. Which one are we playing? We're playing Saga? Is that the one we're playing, dude?
So I'm going to choke you. You're such an ass.
I know.
The Fantasy Flight games, Edge of the Empire.
Edge of the Empire.
I know. No, he doesn't.
No,
He's giving me...
Anyway,
Brett Scott, like he digs really deep into his pockets to find 2 shits about that game.
I do. They're both right here. They're very small. I don't know if you can see them on camera, but they're really small.
2 little shits.
But the cool part that I really like about it is the mechanics in there around the dice, and you can succeed with the challenge, or you can fail, but it's not a failure. There's these different twists and turns on things, and I think Dungeon World has the I'm forgetting the rule, but you can succeed with. Sorry, keep going
with the bonus. But before you get off the Star Wars, Edge of the Empire has critical hits.
Okay, I haven't shot anything yet, so I don't know about that.
Yeah, Brett hasn't really read any of the rules or.
I don't need to read the rules. I have such an awesome game master. There's no point for me to read the rules. They will be. I will totally. I'm going to just absorb this game as we play it. I'm not even.
If forever captured in audio and video at this point, you heard it here first, folks. But yes, it does have critical hits in the. You could trigger them, and there's a table you can roll on. That's like I think it goes like 1 to 200. So you can actually roll over a 100, which will result in something bad. As a matter of fact, if you listen to the campaign podcasts, plug for those guys, they actually, I think I'm on episode 39 or something. I won't give any spoilers away, but somebody takes a hit on a critical table.
So, again, clearly I have not read the Edge of the Empire rule system, but how are the examples and so forth around how that mechanic functions within that game? Because I know you can. It's basically this failing forward, succeeding at a cost, as Kevin was pointing out in the chat room. Are the examples in Edge of it? I mean, as you as a game master, when you're reading it, you're like, oh, these are really. I totally understand how to implement this, or is it good to supplement your learning for that by listening to a podcast or trying to find something else out? Because to me, excuse me, when I first started reading different types of game systems, and I get it now, and they say, oh, it works kind of like this. They'll give a couple brief examples of how to fail forward or something along those lines. And I wonder, I don't know how well that always translates to certain gamers. I've talked to people at Gamehole and stuff. Oh, it's so loosey goosey. It doesn't feel very solid to me for some reason, because it's not a very cut and dried. You fail, you succeed, but you have a -2 on your next roll.
Are you talking about the Star Wars Edge of the Empire game?
What I'm saying is the Edge of the Empire game, to my understanding, doesn't have anything that cut and dried. It doesn't say you succeed, but you have -2 on your next roll. There's nothing like that in there, to my understanding. Yeah. So this is where I want you to talk about this, dude. One, I need to get educated, and two, I'm curious as to it's a better design of what I would consider like a critical hit system or something along those lines. I'm curious how it functions in that capacity.
All right. So the way combat works in Edge of the Empire is everything is a skill check. So even in combat, it's a skill check. It uses the same system, unlike some other systems where it's like a skill check is different than when you get into combat. Skill check, I do this. It's the same die roll. Well, actually, I guess it is similar because D20, you roll a D20 for a skill and you roll it to hit. So, but it's the same mechanics. And I say that because in Fantasy Flight games, Edge of the Empire, Age of Rebellion, and Force and Destiny, gotta remember the names, they use funky dice. And you use the same funky dice whether you're climbing a rope or you're going to shoot somebody in the face. Right? So when you say, hey, I'm going to shoot somebody in the face, then it's either melee or ranged. Then that dictates the difficulty of the check. So if you're in melee, it's an easy difficulty. If you're ranged, it depends on how far you are. If it's way far, it's very difficult. With the difficulty, you add more purple dice. The more purple dice, the more chances there are of it coming up as a failure. Right? So what happens is you roll, it's a dice pool mechanic. You bring them all together, you roll the dice. You're either going to have a success, a threat, an advantage, a triumph, and I think I'm missing a negative in there somewhere.
Okay, so
anyways, you roll the dice.
Tracking.
Yep. So we roll the dice. So if you succeed in shooting the person in the face, you shoot them in the face. If you have advantages or a triumph over that, then what happens is it for every success you do that many damage to. So if you have 5 successes, you do that amount of damage to the person. And then the triumph and the advantages can trigger certain things. So in some weapons, you have a passive and an active trigger. If it's passive, it means it'll do it regardless, right? If you roll a triumph, it automatically does this. Other ones are active. I think it's active, where if you have a triumph, you have to say, yes, I'm going to trigger that piece of my equipment to whop off his hand or shoot him in the face or whatever that is. So then what happens is you can trigger a critical. So some weapons are like, if you roll a triumph, you can trigger its critical. And then when you trigger the critical, you roll a percentile on this fancy chart, and then you add some modifiers to it, and then you see what happens based off that chart. Does that help?
It does.
I haven't run combat, so if I'm explaining that wrong, I'm not off by much.
No, that's cool.
I'm reading up on it because I run it Wednesday, and it's something I'm going to have to know. Let's just put it that way.
I guess I don't have the specific rules in my head, but I know I have read. I mean, I remember reading some of the original World of Darkness stuff like, hey, this is just you can have, when they do this, they succeed a lot. And without decent examples and so forth. And that's why I think some of your better systems like that, I mean, from what you're describing to me, it sounds like, and again, I need to get the rule book. I just haven't had a chance to pick it up. Excuse me. When they have really solid examples and they have charts and graphs and stuff, again, you don't necessarily need the charts and graphs and tables to go through to tell you what critical looks like. But having that, I really think that those pieces in there help teach the game master and the players how to, I guess, do it well within the game itself. So if you don't, how am I doing this? So I really think, I guess, short version is that the critical hits, the failures, and those types of things, I think it really helps to bolster the game master and player's narrative ability. I think by having that in there, and the better the mechanic, the easier it will be to teach you or to help you around there. And I really think that the charts and tables for a new person, like my kids or some of the other, even adults. I mean, if you've not game mastered before and you're like, you feel caught flat-footed with this opportunity to narrate, but you're just feeling like, God, I don't know what to do. Having a reference chart is something, all I have to do is roll another D100 and I can figure out what the problem is. or what the really kick-ass solution is. So I really think there's some cool things that can be bought, learned, or whatever when you're helping new game masters figure out how to improve their narrative power.
Dungeon Crawl Classics is probably one of the better examples out there, and it's not the be all end all, but you roll and if you roll a 1, you run, and depending on what class you have a different critical hit table. And if you are, and then fumble table, I think fumble table might be the same across all of them. I might have to check on that, but I know critical hit tables.
I think you're right on the fumble table. It's been a while since I looked at it.
The critical hit tables in Dungeon Crawl Classics change. So if you're a fighter, your critical hit table is different than if you are a dwarf.
Correct.
Because dwarf is class in Dungeon Crawl Classics. And the cool thing is even spells in Dungeon Crawl Classics has, like, you cast a spell, then you roll on that spell and you add your spell casting modifier to it. And the higher you roll, the more craziness and combustible that spell becomes. So it's not, like I cast Magic Missile, it's 1d4 plus 1. Yay. And no, when you do that in Dungeon Crawl Classics, you roll your d20 spell check, add your modifier to it, and if you roll a 20 plus 4 or 5 to it, whatever that is, you look on the table, it's a 25. What do you get as a 25? And it'll say, lightning streams out of the tips of your fingers as smoke comes out of your fingernails, hits the person squarely in the head and fries their skin off.
Exactly.
I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's
awesome.
A lot like the old Rollmaster MERP stuff. I mean, like I said, the one electrical critical was, nervous system acts as superconductor. All witnesses provided with fine light show dies instantly. And it's these cute little blurbs. The cool part about a game like Dungeon Crawl Classics is that it's a D20 type of system, clearly. So if you want to port those things from one D20 game to another, if you want to play something like Castles and Crusades or Crypts and Creatures, any of the other little retro cloney things, a lot of those D20, any of those F20 type of games, those clones, you can grab a Dungeon Crawl Classics. It's worth, to me, again, if you want to learn how to do it, grab the book, get the PDF, and take the charts. Even if you just steal the charts from there and port it over to your other games, it can add some flavor. And again, as Cthulhu in the chat, and I've mentioned a bunch of times, that it's a good starting point. After you've done it for a while, you'll start taking the charts and either pushing them aside or creating your own, or you're like, look, I have the chart committed to memory. I know what that is, and your narrative will be faster and more fluid as you keep punching through it. And that, to me, then helps to translate. So when I play something like Edge of the Empire, if I don't have a chart, and Sean's like, well, it looks like you succeed with a threat, and if my mechanic character is trying to do something, I'm like, well, okay, Sean, that feels to me like I was able to get the ship's, the ship's engine working, but I'm pretty sure I probably damaged something in life support. It's not now, but it's going to need repair at some point. Sean may go, yeah, okay, that fits the threat component of it. It's not bad. It's not going to kill you right now, but it's something that might come at you later on. So I could see that. Again, to me, it's a good build-up. And so where I want to jump to now, Sean, is that something you and I have been talking about in the Edge of the Empire game is how much do you as a game master like your players throwing in on the what happens on the critical, what happens on the fumble or the threat? Do you want the players to jump in, or are you like, no, I am game master narrative, fuck off all y'all, I will do the talk?
Well, it's kind of a bad example because Fantasy Flight Games' Edge of the Empire game actually says that the player comes up with the results, unless the GM has a specific reason for dictating those. So even if the game can say it all at once, but if you as a game master, I'm asking what you think. Do you like that? In that case,
get the players to do some goddamn work. Is that?
I've heard that if you empower the players to come up with their own coolness, that they will surprise you. And actually, a lot of them will, even when it's negative, they will like to speak up and narrate that. Excuse me, but I don't know if I see that as often as I'm led to believe.
So you're saying when we're playing in your game, we're not as good narrative wise as you believe, or you just don't get the experience?
Oh no. It's not on you guys. You guys will be narrating. It's going to be inevitable, or else the game's going to get it won't be that great. So it's not you guys. I'm just saying that I've heard that if you flip it over, like even negatives, and you say, okay, you rolled a 1 and you fumbled, what happens? Players tend to start getting into that, or so I've heard, but I haven't witnessed that a lot. One is probably because I'm not playing a lot of, critical fumbles games.
Okay.
And I don't know if the players that I game with are big on the negative sides of role playing.
Okay.
Like they lean more on and I could be wrong. I definitely could be wrong. It's not everybody, and it's hard to say unless I really roll with it.
Okay. So I found, in that vein, one of the things I found when I have tossed the narrative ball to the player, even if the mechanic itself doesn't say so, if it's a fail or a success, oftentimes with critical success, right? They shoot him and they roll a big 20, or they hit him hard with the two-handed sword or whatever. Excuse me. They're like, yeah, I want to chop him in half. I want to do this cool thing. They've got this example or narrative already built up in their head. When something negative happens and say, hey, you're going to fumble, what do you think? And if you throw it to them, sometimes the player feels very on the spot, like, I didn't know I was here to narrate, and depending on the age and
you slap them really quick.
Yeah, just boom.
Hey, wake up! Hey, come on, talk to me.
Scruff their neck, just shake the little bastard, and just say, "God damn it, talk to me."
Drop my weapon. All right, let's go. Stick in the game here.
So, a better way to do it, perhaps, is to, if you've got an idea, is to lay a couple out there. I usually give them 2. Like, if I throw, okay, you've just failed. What do you think, Sean? And Sean goes, I'll say, well, I'm seeing X or Y. What do you think? Pick one. Okay, go with Y. Done. And sometimes that way the player, as Angela's saying, if they're not sure where the boundaries are or what they can or can't get away with, when you start throwing examples or ideas to them, then they're like, oh, this is within the bounds of what makes sense for me. And then they start stretching a little bit. They'll take that example that you gave them. Instead of 1 or 2, they may go, well, actually, I'd like this other thing. Because sometimes, as with anything creative, you need a creative kick, right? Sometimes, a quick example or an idea can get the player saying, oh, I have the power to choose this thing. Brett gave me 2 ideas, and I've got something else to do. So I think
do it at a con, man. Do it at a con. Hey, what happens? What happens? Hey, you. Hey, what do you think happens to her? And you're, I think her hand like gets chopped off. Awesome. And then what? And then when it goes back to that person, I bet you
they're pissed off.
that player's be like, oh, he totally knocks off his own head. Oh, that's perfect. Awesome. Yeah, right. And get everybody going at each other.
So even if we're not talking con game per se, but if you're, I think, again, to get people into it, if somebody is having a hard time from a player perspective narrating the failure or even the critical, if you as game master or other players, my group will do this periodically, like I'll be like, well, I think, and then bam, Lenny will throw something in, Zave, Kevin, well, I'm thinking this is what makes sense to me. And it doesn't take long. You get a pretty quick consensus from people like, yeah, we like that idea. And they've gone negative stuff or positive stuff or whatever. And I think that there's a cool piece. One of the folks in the chat room commented on this. It's kind of that Matrix moment where you slow the combat down for an instant and you go for exactly. It's like bullet time, babe, right? You're in the combat and you've got this critical hit. It gives you, say, okay, here's what happens after you've taken in all of the input from everybody. And you narrate the dwarf wading through the goblins, knocking aside the small ones, leaps in the air, does the thing. It's cool. And it gives you that opportunity to take in all that stuff and then force it right into narrative, even the negative things you can do as well. And again, if the player on the spot doesn't get it, other players, I strongly suggest you chip in, give that person ideas, and Game Master, throw a couple options at them, at least 2. Well, I'm seeing X or Y. What do you think? Pick one, if nothing else. And you can help keep it going so you don't have too much bullet time is a bad thing too. Too much matrixy, slow down. If it takes too long to decide it, that's not fun.
What? Too much bullet time, matrixy. It's too much.
Yeah, too much.
Yes, because we all play role-playing games where everybody's doing the matrix thing.
No, it's the slow motion component of it where the narrative is very detailed is what I'm talking about. Perhaps a bad example, but
I want everything in my role-playing games to be gonzo. If you go into a bar and it's the boringest shit in the world, I want you to order a drink with gusto.
Okay. Extra gusto. I demand an ale. Okay, Jesus.
That's right.
Good God.
Exactly.
My
Yeah,
crom,
that's what I'm talking
what
about.
gives, man? I punched the bartender in the face. I said an ale. Oh, good Lord. Craziness. So anyway, I think that I'd have to go back in the history of gaming to determine if the critical hits and fumbles were the first component of this. I mean, I remember reading some of the original D&D books. They talked about trying to make combat narrative and trying to make skill checks narrative. But I think those charts and graphs and tables were like the first, like, hey, here's how you can do a thing. And I believe that still holds a lot of power for an up-and-coming game master or players. And once you get used to them, you can roll into things easier. Because even if a game itself, even if your game system doesn't necessarily have a mechanic like an Edge of the Empire with threats, triumphs, and so forth, there's no reason that you can't use some of those narrative components of it to throw in, if you will, and help make the adventure a little more entertaining. That's what I think. What do you think,
That's
Sean?
good thinking, man. I think that's good stuff, man.
All right.
Are we good with?
I think I'm good right now.
Are we good, or did we miss anything?
No, I think that's pretty much what I want to talk about. I think it's I don't think that necessarily having charts and tables indicates a good system or a better system than another, but I'm really digging more on. I think your more modern games and some things that they're throwing out there are better ways they're better examples and in different ways to get people to understand how the narration fits within the component of it. So it's another tool in the toolbox, if you will. But anyway, I think it's cool, and I really like the idea of pitching stuff to the players and encouraging them strongly. Even if you don't have tables and charts, just pull them in and say, what do you think should happen? Give me something cool.
Grab them by their frickin' scruff and pull them in.
Yes, whether they like it or not.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all I had, man. That's what I had.
If you run critical hits and critical fumbles in your RPG and it's not native to the game, or you do something unique with them, by all means, write into us via email at gamingnbs@gmail.com. Hit us up on Facebook or the Google Plus community, or even Twitter, and let us know how you incorporate those into your game, and how do the players get into that? If you're a GM, how do you encourage players to get into that? If you do, sometime maybe you dictate it. But anyways, we'd be interested to hear from you.
Yeah, and if there's a game system you think really helps or is really kick ass at it, lay us out there, because I'm positive there's game systems out there that Sean and I have not heard of. So there's some good stuff out there. There's good stuff, man.
Okay, not heard of. That's crazy. All right, let's get into die roll. Die roll. As my new friend Mark Dawson would say, this is die roll, where we discuss 2D4 miscellaneous points of gaming or geekery we want to share with you and bring to your attention. And if you think something is worthy enough for the mighty die roll, submit it to us and we'll put it on the air and give you some credit. Maybe give you some XP. We should have an ongoing XP.
Yeah, we could do that.
Like just like a spreadsheet of people who submit stuff and do things and give them XP and level them up.
Yeah, that'll work. That's one more bit of bookkeeping we need to do, Sean. That's what we need.
Yeah.
All right.
It's good, but just make an app There's an app for
There's
that.
an app for that. All right.
You should. We could make an app. Like we make an app. It's part of the podcast. And they do things like, hey, record a little bumper. And then they record it. And then they submit it. And it automatically gives them XP for it. I am a freaking genius. Next, let's go to 2D4. Let's go to the die roll.
All right. So my first one is Mr. Mo Toussaint, the Canadian god of gaming, posted this up for us, or I should say in general on the Google Pluses, 3D room tiles for the Mice and Mystics board game. I'm a fan of Mice and Mystics. I've talked about it here on the show before. Great board game. And I've got the link out there in the show notes. It's for it's 3D room tiles. Basically, your characters you're playing are warriors and wizards and stuff transformed into mice, and you're going through this. And you go through these different adventures, and having it kind of 3Ds. It's almost, instead of just a flat board game, it's kind of like using Dwarven Forge, if you will, type of thing. So I think it's pretty damn cool. The other one I had, number 2, is a do-it-yourself gaming table. There is a lot of people have been, excuse me, I should say, as of late, I've seen on Google Plus talking about, different gaming tables, designs, play spaces, and so forth. I've seen a number of these different components. And one of the pieces this guy does in here is he takes a TV and insets it so that he can use it basically as a large monitor to put out maps and things so that you can move miniatures across the top of it. This is something my buddy Zave and I and Alpha have been talking about for a couple years, so I thought this was a pretty cool little bit. It's a longer YouTube watch, but it's kind of cool what he pulls out through it. So anyway, that's what I have.
Maps are so 2001.
Whatever, dude. Retro, man. Retro.
Yeah. Okay. Number 1, diversity in tabletop role-playing community. It is a short film. I would consider it a short film documentary by John Sheldon, who I follow on Google Plus and Facebook. I think he went to Metatopia and spoke to Mark Diaz-Truman and Rob Donahue and some other individuals that are within the RPG industry. And I thought it was worth the watch. I think all of us need to watch it just to get some awareness around it, because if you listen to it and some of the things that some people have gone through in our hobby, it's just like, are you freaking serious? That really happens? And, who knows? Maybe I've done it before. I don't know, but it's just craziness. But he put it together. It's well produced, I think, considering John's, I don't think, a professional movie maker, but I thought it was well done and well worth watching. So check it out on YouTube for sure.
Very cool.
More Vikings needed for transatlantic voyage on a 115-foot long ship. Brett, if anybody looks like a Viking, it's you.
I might have to. Well, I'll have to look into it if I got time.
Mrs. Brett, there's a long ship waiting for him.
If she could put me on a long ship and send me away for a transatlantic voyage for a while, I think she might do that. I think that's possible.
I think it all depends. All depends on when you ask her.
Yeah.
It all depends. Yeah.
Earlier today or yesterday? Yeah. She'd have put me in a fucking canoe, I think.
Sometimes
in a loaf of moldy bread and cheese.
Or maybe just a black bag that takes on water really quick.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So if you're not doing anything, transatlantic flight. I mean, hey, screw those luxury cruises, man. Screw like Festival and Carnival cruise lines. Do this. Seasickness, disease.
Yeah. What's not to get into there?
Crappy conditions.
Nice.
All right. That's it for Die Roll. Let's get into the sponsor. Great Out Productions, maker of fine dice bags.
Yep. That's our buddy Michael Althauser over at greatout.etsy.com. Use our gaming NBS, all one word promo. You'll get 10% off your order. Christmas is really, really freaking close. Chances are, I'm going to say chances are, but you have to talk to Michael. I'm not sure if he can get you your dice bags before Christmas or not. He's had a number of different things in his inventory, but he's got the old dual draw strength, tough as nails, as I'm fond of saying, and does some really good custom work, and even, like I said, the things that are in his shop right now. So check him out. Throw him a shekel or two. Hey, what gamer doesn't need another die bag, man?
And find him over at greatout.etsy.com. That's GREYEDOUT.etsy.com. Thanks for sponsoring the show, Michael. We appreciate
Absolutely.
it.
Speaking of sponsors, we've got a Patreon out there, and Joe Swick, Kevin Lovecraft, Kev Flulu have been patrons of the show. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for continuing your support. There's others out there as well, but thank you all. It's really, really nice to see.
Yeah, and so, pimping for the show, if you haven't, we sent out our first newsletter, Brett. Did you get a copy?
I did indeed get a copy, I think. I'll have to look.
Yeah,
Might have gone right to my junk.
We put out our first email that's just kind of talking about what we're doing for 2016 and where we're going to be for cons. If you want to be on that email list, go over to gamingandbs.com, go to the right side, put in your name, first name, last name, and email address. We don't spam you. We don't send it to anybody else. Just lets you know what's going on with us. Maybe solicit some feedback from you. That's pretty much about it, man. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. I'm one of your hosts,
And
Sean.
I'm Brett.